The moment his eyes opened, he wasn't sure if he was dreaming or dead. Heat pressed in on his skin like silk turned to steam, and the air was thick with a heady sweetness, like jasmine and ozone. A voice echoed through his hazy mind, delicate yet commanding. "You're real, and you belong to us now." His head spun. His body ached. And as his vision cleared, he saw her, an ethereal creature with emerald skin and golden eyes, her fingers trailing gently across his cheek. Around her stood more of them, statuesque, breathtaking, like warriors sculpted by desire and war. Every inch of them gleamed under the filtered sunlight that pierced the forest canopy. They stared at him not with fear or curiosity, but hunger. It wasn't just physical. It was something deeper. Older. Like he had just stumbled into a myth that had been waiting for him to arrive. It had started as a mission, a routine patrol across the outer rim near the Vayari belt. But when the freighter he'd been escorting suddenly imploded, and the shockwave ripped across the left thruster of his ship, Rhett called a new gravity would have the last word. He barely managed to eject before the whole system died, spiraling toward the thick, green swirl of the unknown moon below. The impact fractured something in his ribs and all of his navigation equipment. But what stunned him most wasn't the pain, it was the silence. No comms. No tech. No humans. Just the haunting hum of a living world and eyes watching him from the shadows. They didn't speak at first. Just circled him. Tall, lithe bodies gleaming with tribal armor that clung like shadows to their curves. Their skin was a shade of green so rich it shimmered with iridescent flecks in the light. Their eyes varied amber, silver, violet. But all shared that same expression, awe, caution, and possession. The one who had touched his cheek, clearly their leader, finally spoke. Her voice was smooth and low, edged with command. "You are not of Ophira. Yet you fell into our sacred sky." He tried to stand but pain lanced through his side. She knelt beside him. "You are injured. You will accept our healing." It wasn't a request. They carried him, gently, yet firmly, into a settlement woven seamlessly into the trees. Vines glowing faintly with bioluminescence formed arched bridges between platforms of living wood. The air pulsed with warmth and distant music. It didn't feel primitive. It felt intentional. Ritualistic. Powerful. Inside a structure carved from a single, massive tree, he was laid on a bed of petals that radiated heat. The women began to chant in low tones. The leader, who had introduced herself as Liara, removed her chest plate, revealing intricate glowing tattoos across her collarbones that pulsed as her skin made contact with his. Her hands pressed lightly on his chest, over his ribs. The moment they touched, Rhett felt a rush of sensation unlike anything he'd known. Heat, memory, longing, it surged through him like a current. Whatever this was, it was no mere massage. It was intimate. Raw. As if she were reading his soul through his heartbeat. When it was done, the pain in his ribs was gone, but something else had taken root. A connection. He couldn't explain it, but her presence lingered in his mind like a scent he couldn't stop chasing. Days passed, or maybe it was only hours. Time felt different here. He was treated like a guest, and a captive. He couldn't leave the village. He didn't want to, not yet. The more he saw, the deeper the mystery grew. There were no men. Not one. Liara explained with careful words, the males of their kind had vanished generations ago during the Star Splinter War. Since then, the Velarin had adapted, evolved, and survived, but not without a cost. "You," she said one evening as they stood at the edge of a waterfall draped in vines, "are the first man we have seen in over 200 years. The prophecy called you the Sun-Bearer. A light from the stars who would awaken the choosing." Rhett laughed, but her face remained stoic. "This isn't a joke to us, Terran. Your arrival has consequences." He looked at her then, really looked. Beneath the rigid poise and trained grace was something wounded. She carried the weight of her people like armor. He wanted to ask more, but a sudden scream broke the air. Not one of pain, but alarm. They rushed back to the village. Torches were extinguished. Shadows flickered. Something had breached the perimeter. Liara drew a curved blade from her hip and motioned him behind her. But in the chaos, a dart hissed through the air and struck Rhett in the neck. He staggered. Her voice shouted something in Velarin. Hands reached for him, but not hers. Another woman's eyes stared into his, unfamiliar and cold. His vision blurred. The last thing he saw was Liara sprinting toward him, and then everything went dark. He awoke in a place that smelled like perfume and iron. Pillars carved with symbols rose above him, and satin-like cloth draped the walls. A different voice greeted him this time, softer, seductive, with an edge of mischief. Well, it purred, so this is the prize my sister was hiding. Rhett blinked, trying to sit up, but found himself lying on a bed surrounded by strange incense. A woman approached, her green skin shimmering in the candlelight, her features strikingly similar to Liara's, but her smile was not kind. "Welcome to the other half of Ophira," she whispered, running a finger along his jaw. "Here, we believe in choice. And you, beautiful outsider, are about to make the most important one of your life." The scent of her skin was unlike Liara's, less wild forest, more exotic spice. Wherever Rhett was, it was far from the village that had become both his prison and his sanctuary. The woman, no, queen, by the way she held herself, circled him slowly, as if he were a sculpture to be admired and appraised. Her hair was darker, her eyes brighter than Liara's. And yet something about her felt even more dangerous. "You're awake," she said, her tone casual, almost playful. "That's good. I was worried Liara's pet wouldn't survive the trip." He sat up, heart still pounding. "Where am I? Who are you?" She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "You don't know? She didn't tell you about me?" Her fingers reached for a decanter on a nearby table, pouring him a glass of something deep red and shimmering. She offered it without hesitation. "I'm Carlith, Liara's elder sister. Once commander of the Northern Spires. Now, the rightful queen of Ophira." He didn't touch the drink. Carlith smiled with thin amusement. "Careful. Smart. I like that." A heavy silence settled between them as Rhett tried to process what this meant. The rumors Liara had dropped in half-sentences and unfinished thoughts now clicked together. A civil fracture. A sister lost to ambition. And Rhett. Caught between the two. "I'm not your property," he said, finally. Carlith raised an eyebrow. "Darling, no one said you were." "Not yet." She gestured for him to follow her. And though every instinct told him to stay seated, he stood and moved with her down a long corridor, its walls alive with pulsing vines and glowing sigils. As they walked, she spoke, weaving a history he hadn't yet heard. "When the last of the male bloodlines disappeared, our people shattered. Half believed we must adapt, remain pure and endure. The other half believed we must evolve. Reclaim what was lost by any means. Liara chose tradition. I chose truth." They stepped into a wide-open courtyard where dozens of women were training, sparring, meditating, studying ancient tech fused with organic crystal. These were not passive priestesses. They were warriors, scholars, engineers. And they all paused when they saw him. Their eyes drank him in with wonder and whispers. Some even bowed slightly. "You see," Carlith murmured, stepping close. "You are not a man here. You are a symbol. You carry the prophecy in your breath and blood. You could be a god to these people." Rhett shook his head. "That's not what I want." She chuckled. "That's exactly why they'll follow you." Later, she brought him to her private chambers. The walls curved like the inside of a seashell, covered in intricate carvings, scenes of stars, ships, and lovers entwined. She poured another drink, this time for herself, and settled beside him on a velvet-cushioned bench that overlooked a balcony bathed in twin moonlight. "You must think I'm the villain in Liara's story," she said softly. "But ask yourself, did she ever give you a choice?" He said nothing. "She locked you in a village. Surrounded you with lust and prophecy. Was that freedom? Or a cage lined in silk?" Rhett looked away, toward the moonlight. Somewhere beyond those hills, Liara was either planning to rescue him, or she thought he had betrayed her. That pendant, her family's crest, was still somewhere near the place they had kissed under starlight. The place where, for one fleeting moment, he thought he had found something real. "I don't know what any of this is," he murmured. "None of this makes sense." Carlith leaned in close. Then let me help you understand. Her hand brushed his shoulder. Not possessive. Not aggressive. Just warm. Curious. She studied him like someone trying to find truth hidden beneath muscle and bone. He felt her breath on his neck, her voice soft as silk. Let me show you what choice feels like. His heart hammered. She was beautiful, undeniably. Her presence pulled at him like gravity, but something inside him resisted. It wasn't just loyalty to Liara. It was the storm of everything he didn't yet understand. He stood suddenly, breaking the tension like glass. I need air. She didn't stop him. She only smiled again, that strange, knowing smile. The balcony's yours. The stars listen to the brave. He stepped out into the cool night, the moon's casting pale light across the terrace. The wind carried whispers, echoes of drums from distant villages, or maybe just the ache of memory. He leaned on the stone railing, breathing deep. Then he saw it, just barely, through the trees, a flicker of movement. A flash of silver. A shape too fast to be wind. Liara. His chest clenched. She had come. Even after everything, she had come for him. He didn't dare react. The moment had to be perfect. Back inside, Carlith was speaking with one of her guards in a low tone. He recognized some of the language now, enough to understand. Prepare him for the announcement. Tomorrow, he declares allegiance. Rhett knew then that staying any longer would mean becoming part of something he couldn't control. Carlith didn't want peace. She wanted power. And she wanted him as her symbol. That night, he lay in a guest chamber of silk and gold, staring at the ceiling while the stars wheeled overhead. A gentle knock came at the door. He sat up, heart racing. It opened. Not a servant. Not Carlith. Liara. She stepped inside, silent as a shadow. Her armor was scraped and torn. Her face was bruised. But her eyes were fire. You came, he whispered. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. I should have never left you alone. He stood. She reached out, touched his face just as she had the first time they met. And for one breathless moment, the world stopped moving. You're not safe here, she said. I know. We go now. He nodded. As they slipped through dark corridors, every heartbeat thundered in his ears. At any moment, a guard could turn, a door could open, Carlith could call his name. But they moved as one, her steps sharp, his instincts focused. They reached a side tunnel, shielded by roots and overgrowth. She ducked through, pulled him behind her, and then they were outside. The cool air tasted like freedom and risk. But as they ran, Rhett glanced back once. And from a high window above the balcony, he saw Carlith standing in shadow, watching them go. She didn't scream. She didn't chase. She only smiled. They didn't stop running until the canopy thickened and the moonlight disappeared behind tangled trees. Even then, Liara didn't speak. Her breathing was shallow but controlled, every movement calculated. Rhett kept pace, barely, the adrenaline surging harder than the pain in his ribs. Their escape had not been chased. No alarms. No guards. Just the distant hum of Carlith's city behind them, now swallowed by the forest. She let us go, Rhett said between breaths. No, Liara answered without turning. She's waiting. For what? For you to come back willingly. They crossed a river of glowing water, its surface disturbed by strange bioluminescent fish that scattered like tiny stars. Liara paused only once, to press her fingers against a stone embedded with crystal runes. The wall beside it groaned and shifted open, revealing a hidden passageway descending into the earth. She would never follow here, Liara said as they entered. This place belongs to the roots. To the old pulse. The descent took them into a cavern unlike anything Rhett had imagined. The walls were alive, pulsing with a soft amber light. Thick vines, braided like cables, hummed with energy. It felt ancient. Sacred. The silence wasn't empty, it was listening. Liara removed her gauntlets, placed her hands on the vine-covered wall, and closed her eyes. The hum grew louder. The air vibrated gently. Rhett watched, unsure if he was intruding on something spiritual or intimate. She thinks she understands this place, Liara said softly. But she only sees what she can control. He stepped closer. What is this place? This is where we speak to the planet. Rhett blinked. You mean literally? Liara turned to him. Ophira is not just soil and stone. It remembers. It listens. And when it chooses, it answers. She walked to a platform covered in moss and motioned for him to sit. He obeyed, sensing that this was more than just shelter. As soon as he settled, Liara knelt beside him, her hands gently guiding his to the warm pulse of the living wall. Close your eyes, she whispered. And don't let go. When his eyes shut, darkness didn't come. Instead, there was light waves of memory not his own. A city crumbling. A kiss under a crimson eclipse. The cry of a child born too early. A war started by a lie. A man falling from the sky. His breath caught. He saw himself. And then he saw her, Liara, kneeling beside a dying tree, her tears soaking the roots. Her voice, silent and shaking, had begged the soil for hope. And the soil had answered. Rhett gasped and pulled his hands back. The vision shattered. What was that? Pieces of what the planet carries. It shows only what matters. He stared at her, heart thudding. You asked it to send me. I asked for something to change. And then the sky burned. He didn't know what to say. The air between them was heavy now, but not with fear. With closeness. The kind that burned in the space between what's been said and what hasn't. He reached out, touching her wrist gently. You believed I could help. I didn't believe. I hoped. Silence again. Not empty. Charged. Then, without words, they moved closer. Not out of obligation. Not prophecy. But need. Her lips met his, not forceful, not desperate, but real. And for a moment, they weren't savior and warrior, prophecy and past. They were just two souls, wounded and reaching. The kiss deepened. Her hands slid into his hair. His arms pulled her closer. Every breath shared between them echoed like thunder in the silence. But even in the passion, he felt the tension. The truth. When their foreheads touched, and their lips parted just enough to speak, she whispered, the prophecy says if the sunbearer gives his heart, only one side survives. He froze. What? Unity demands sacrifice, she said. You are not just a man. You are a mirror. If you choose me, the Velarin live. Carlitha's bloodline fades. And if I choose her, I die. Rhett stared into her eyes. They did not plead. They did not beg. They simply held his. What if I choose neither? Then both halves fall. And Ophira burns. He stood, breath shaky. This can't be real. It is, she said, rising too. This is why she didn't chase you. She knows the choice must be yours. They emerged from the cavern at dawn. The forest had changed. Creatures moved with urgency. The wind carried a hum of unrest. Far off in the distance, smoke began to rise. She's already moving, Liara said. If she takes the temple, the core will destabilize. Everything collapses. Rhett didn't wait. He pulled the pendant she had given him from his pocket, the one he thought he'd lost. It had been hidden in his boot the whole time. He pressed it against a small tablet on his wrist, the only Terran tech still intact. It powered on, blinking weakly. There's a chance, he said. If I can amplify the signal using the temple's resonance, I can send a stabilizing pulse. Override both energy fields. Force unity. Liara touched his shoulder. And if it fails? Then I die before I choose. The temple was a towering spire of crystal and root at the center of a massive lake. Carlitha's forces were already moving on it from the south, their warships gleaming with stolen tech. Liara's warriors circled from the north, outnumbered but fierce. Rhett stood at the shore, staring at the growing chaos. A voice crackled from his wrist, his own recorder, activated by the pendant. Sunbearer protocol initiated. Biosync complete. Choose directive. Liara turned to him, eyes wide. The core is listening. Rhett's heart pounded. He took one step forward. Then another. The moment his foot touched the water, it glowed beneath him, and the lake began to ripple like a mirror breaking. He walked into it anyway. As he reached the center of the lake, where the light pulsed brightest, he fell to his knees. The tech in his wrist fused with the ground beneath him. The temple began to sing. The sky split with energy. And then everything went white. His body felt like fire and ice had collided in his veins. Rhett didn't know if he was conscious or somewhere between life and death. He floated weightless, suspended in a sphere of energy at the center of the lake, his limbs spread, his chest glowing where the Terran tech had fused with the pulsing roots of the temple floor. Above him, Ophira's twin suns had aligned. Below, the core of the planet whispered, rumbling in an ancient language made of vibration and memory. He saw them. Liara, blooded but unyielding, standing at the temple gates, her sword drawn and her people behind her. Carlith, regal and untouchable, her cloak of dark feathers spread like wings, her eyes locked on the light. The resonance chamber had become a prism between worlds, every heartbeat a decision, every breath a countdown. Sunbearer, the voice spoke in his mind, not a computer, not a machine, but something older. The planet itself. You carry the weight of two fates. One must burn, or both will fall. Rhett clenched his fists. I won't choose one over the other. I won't destroy them. Then give everything. Give yourself. He saw it then, the path the planet offered. Not power. Not command. Sacrifice. If he bonded fully with the planetary core, he could neutralize the energy divide between the Velarin and the followers of Carlith. He could stabilize Ophira. Unify it. But it would cost him his form. His freedom. His future. He would become more than a man, he would become a bridge. A living conduit. Neither ruler nor warrior. No longer Rhett Calder. Just, the Sunbearer. And then, in the flashing memories from the core's network, he saw something else. Liara. The way she touched him the first time, cautious yet reverent. The way she spoke to the forest like it was a friend. The way her lips trembled when she said, I hoped. He saw her not as prophecy's pawn, but as the only real thing he'd known since crashing here. And he knew what he had to do. He reached out with his mind, the way Liara had taught him. Not through wires, not through code, but through emotion. Through trust. Through love. The sky above the temple cracked with a thunder that was felt, not heard. Ribbons of silver and gold arced from the lake to the heavens. The warriors on both sides fell to their knees, shielding their eyes as the light engulfed the valley. Liara screamed his name. But Rhett was already gone. Or so it seemed. Hours later, when the light faded, the lake was still. Silent. Peaceful. The temple had changed. It no longer pulsed with red and green, with division and war. Now it shimmered with a soft blue glow unity. The battlefield was gone. Weapons dropped. Carlith stood at the shore, no longer draped in feathers but in silence. Her expression was not anger. Not defeat. It was something deeper. She walked slowly to the lake's edge and fell to her knees. And then she whispered, he chose, us all. Liara did not weep. She stood in the same place, hands at her sides, the pendant still around her neck. It glowed faintly. Warm. She stepped into the water. It welcomed her. Every footstep sent ripples of light across the surface, until she reached the center, where the platform remained. In its center, where Rhett had last knelt, now grew a tree. Not just any tree. A tree that shimmered like it held stars in its bark. Its branches reached skyward, bearing leaves shaped like flame and crystal. From its trunk, a gentle heartbeat could be felt. She pressed her palm to it. And her breath caught. Because within the pulse, there was his voice. Not loud. Not clear. But real. Liara. Tears slid down her face for the first time. She didn't know if he was alive in the way mortals defined it. But she knew he hadn't left her. He had become part of something bigger, and somehow, she could still feel his presence when the wind touched her cheek or when the roots whispered beneath the soil. In the days that followed, the Velarin and Carlith's people laid down arms. The prophecy was rewritten, not of destruction or dominance, but of balance. Rhett Calder, the Terran who fell from the sky, had become legend. Not as a conqueror. Not as a king. But as the one who gave everything to stop the war before it began. The new world blossomed. Ophira began to heal. And Liara. Liara became its guardian. Every evening, she returned to the lake, sat beneath the tree he had become, and spoke to him. Of the stars. Of the children learning to sing both sides' songs. Of the way Carlith now walked among the people without her crown, teaching, learning, forgiving. But some nights, when the stars aligned just right, and the wind carried jasmine and ozone through the air, she swore she felt a hand brush across her cheek. Just like that first day. Just like the moment he arrived. And in the rustling of the tree's silver leaves, she always heard the same words. You were never just prophecy. You were always my choice. And so, the man who crashed on a planet without men became more than myth. He became the heartbeat of a world reborn by love.